Hey everybody, just here to talk some NFL draft before the draft actually starts. So, I mean, I don't think it pays to go through pick by pick. You've seen all the mock drafts out there, but I'll try to come up with some guys and talk about some guys that not everybody likes as much as I do, or maybe I'm lower on some guys that are really popular right now. Um, you know, try to break up some of those narratives and offer some alternate possibilities that could happen in the draft. Um, because, like Miles Garrett, number one overall. Yeah, Miles Garrett is good, but he's not a guaranteed, uh, all pro guy. There's plenty of stuff not to like about Miles Garrett. And yet everybody just latched on to him after the combine, and like all of a sudden he's got to be number one, and it's kind of annoying. But basically, my top quarterback is Mitch Trubisky. So um, I wouldn't mind if the Browns go number one overall with him. I don't think they have to. Solomon Thomas is good. Miles Garrett is good. It's pretty much down to Garrett and Trubisky at this time. I'm guessing they'll go with Trubisky, or Garrett, but there are some Trubisky rumors gaining steam, and I actually wouldn't be surprised, and I don't think it'd be a bad pick. The Browns passed on Wentz last year, and that made sense from the standpoint that they were trying to get picks and add talent to their team and all of that so that a quarterback can come into a better situation. Plus, Wentz was from the FCS. And so I thought, passing on a quarterback last year made sense. And then, what are you going to pass on all of the quarterbacks again this year? And if you're going to pass on them at one, then, why are you going to take a guy you don't believe is a franchise guy at number 12? Because if you believe he's a franchise guy, you just take him at number one. So you're basically saying you don't think he's a franchise guy at that point. So I don't like the idea of passing on a quarterback at one to get him at number 12. And I honestly don't think he'll be there anyways. Because there's a lot of quarterback needy teams in the top 10 that, even teams like Chicago could take him. So San Francisco, all of the top teams could. So um, if you like Trubisky, you think he's a franchise guy, you have two first round picks, you have all of these picks, you don't need more picks. So you don't need to trade down, but you do need a lot of talent, so why throw all these picks away by trading up? Just I'd take the I'd take the quarterback, and I guess that goes hand in hand. I don't think Garrett's a can't miss prospect. I think yeah, he's a blue chip prospect in this draft, but there's plenty to worry about him. So my number two quarterback though is actually Brad Kaya. I think there's a lot to like about him. People got off of him. He used to be like a number one project overall projection. I still like him. He's being projected around the third round or something like that. I'd want the Packers, as a Packers fan, I'd want the Packers to take him at, in the third round. Um, that'd be a steal in my opinion. He's got, he lacks a little poise, but other than that, he's got a lot that you look for. Like his arm is pretty good. It's not like an elite arm, but it's good enough to make all the throws in my opinion. I think he came up 53 miles per hour on the radar gun. You want to be 55, but it's 2 miles an hour. I'm not going to kill him for it. Um, and I think the radar gun, I'm not really into that stat too much, anyways. It doesn't worry me unless it's like Deshaun Watson, where he comes up with the 49 miles per hour, because all you're trying to do is throw the ball hard. So you don't even need to be accurate. So why are you only 49 miles per hour when a lot of these guys are at 60 and you want to be at 55? So um, and then people say he's a statue. I think it's more. I think he can run somewhat. He doesn't want to. He's not what I would call athletic. That I think that's why he didn't test. But um, he's a guy that he's a pocket passer. That's what's successful in the NFL. It seems like everybody wants all these athletic quarterbacks that run all over the place, but that's not what has been successful. Like the RJ3s of the world get hurt. So quarterbacks like Rodgers, he's got athleticism to run, but he's standing in the pocket, and you know that's where he's trying to do his damage. And then if he needs to extend the play, he uses his feet to extend the play, but he's still looking to pass. So, um, and you don't really need to be that athletic to extend the play like that. It's more about creativity, things like that. So you don't need to be, people way overestimate how athletic a guy needs to be. Like, you know, Pat Mahomes, who I'm not a big fan of, he can make a lot of people miss, but he's not really that athletic. He came in at like a 4.8 40 or something like that. Trubisky came in at like a 4.6 40. So, um, you know, all this, athleticism argument, throw it out the door. Um, but so Kaya, you go back to his arm strength, it's good enough. There were some times against Pitt where he did run the ball. So, um, if the defense, you know, leaves them wide open with all this field, he will take it some occasionally. I'd like to see him do it more, but he's shown that he's willing to. Um, and Pitt is really why I like Kaya so much. Some of his other games, it really he wasn't consistent. It depends on what you are watching, right? So if you watch the Pitt game and you think that's what he is, he's in the rain. He has really good accuracy, and he's making all the throws. He's got perfect ball placement, and he's taken the open field running when there's nothing open downfield, and making the defense pay for not paying attention to him. So you know that Pitt game was exceptional. He showed that's franchise caliber, that game. And Pitt does have some good DBs. It's not like Pitt's defenses, it's not like they have nobody. So um, they were a ranked team at one point. So uh, Kaya has a nice compact throwing motion. He's got pretty good mechanics and footwork, which probably means it's hard to know the mental side of things, but you know, he could probably do pretty well to pretty quickly. And I think, if the Browns can't get a quarterback in the first round or they pass, take Kaya in the second, or if he's there in the third, you could take Kaya. Like he does really well in the weather. Like he played in some really bad um, games where it was just downpouring, and he just continued to perform well. So I wouldn't have a problem with that either if Kaya, according to all reports, he's not going in the first round. So um, that I really like that really want to stress that compact throwing motion of Kaya though. Um, I did see him overthrow some long passes, but then in other games I saw him, make those passes. He just needs more consistency on the long passes. So, and when he did run against Pitt, he did look unathletic. That was in my notes before he even refused a test at the combine. So, um, he does have this bad habit of facing away from pressure. So, uh, when he needs to throw the ball and get it out, when facing the blitz, he tries to protect himself too much, and you can't worry that much about it. So sometimes you just have to take the hit and deliver the ball. So that's Brad Kaya. Maybe I ripped on him a little too much, but I actually like him. So he's my second overall quarterback. I don't hate any of these guys. I wouldn't have a problem if Trubisky, Kaya, Kaiser, and Watson all went in the first round. And then I know other people like Mahomes more than I do. I think Mahomes to me is like a day 3 guy. But I understand why other people like him. I just think with Mahomes, you have too much of an arm strength issue. And you have, or not arm strength issue, arm mechanics issue. You have his footwork is god awful. Like he hops along, and it's just if it was only the arm mechanics, or if it was only the foot mechanics, then you could say, okay, he can. We could teach him the playbook. We'll fix his footwork, and go on. But it's like, okay, we're gonna uh, have to fix the way he holds the ball when he's running. We're gonna have to fix the way he throws the ball. We're gonna have to, make him more compact and quicker thrower and all of that. And then when it comes to his footwork, we're gonna have to fix all that as well. And you know, get his a reasonable back pedal. I saw some like major draft analysts, you know, in terms of the Twitter world, talking about how Mahomes is doing what you want when he's actually like dropping back in terms of footwork, and I have no idea what they're looking at. The guy's like hopping along. He's not even crossing his legs like you want, and he let's not even get into the decision making of throwing off balance and stuff, throwing horrible interceptions, and you know he gets comparisons to Brett Favre, but like Brett Favre isn't what you want out of a quarterback. Brett Favre was successful despite making terrible decisions. And if you really look to it, as good as Brett Favre was, he only won one Super Bowl, and that's because he cost himself Super Bowl chance after Super Bowl chance, throwing terrible interceptions in the playoffs. And there are serious questions about if Mahomes, um, even as the talent of Favre, um, so, if Favre had the it factor, Favre had, um, he was the Iron Man, he was there every game, you know, he was not a guy who could afford to miss games. You know, those teams, those Packer teams went into the playoffs, with losing quite a few games from him throwing interceptions. So if Mahomes starts getting injuries for a game or two and only is sounds weird, but only is Brett Favre, that could be the difference in making or not making the playoffs. So um, the Brett Favre comparison isn't as good as you think, as people make it out to be. And then let's see. If we're let's talk about some. I'm I like Nate Peterman. I guess I like. Um, I don't like Dobbs or Webb. All those guys are day three guys. So for me, 1 second. Hey, cat. So 1 second. My cat's crying. I gotta let him in. So okay. Hopefully he doesn't make too much noise. But so if there's any position you want to know about Ketzel, let me know, and I'll try to take it on. But I'll guess I'll talk about wide receivers a little bit. I like John Ross a lot. Um, I think 4.22 speed, that's generational. You're only gonna see that once in our lifetime. I think that puts him in the top 10 alone just by 4.22 speed. Given the fact that he's not a track guy, he beats press, he runs routes. Um, so y there are, there's a lot to like there. So with Corey Davis, oh yeah, Ross has those injury issues, but it's hard as fans to knock him down for injuries because we don't really know. Like he had the ACL, but then he recovered from it and played. He had the meniscus, which he recovered from and played with. He hurt his shoulder, but he played through it. And so I'm not gonna downgrade him too much. If he falls, it's because of the injuries, and you just accept that. But without really knowing the full injury extent, and there were some rumors that it was fine, and there were some rumors that it is a problem. So in terms of talent, he's a top 10 guy. Corey Davis, I like him as my number two guy. Um, but he doesn't have times, and I think that's going to cost him because he's coming from the MAC and he didn't play against top talent. And, what are you going to do? Like, it's hard to take a risk on a guy with that many variables. And does he have the great three cone that you want to see it? Would he come up with the solid 20-yard shuttle? I'm not sure about that. I think he has the speed, um, and the 4.4s and all of that, but I'd like to see the times. And he's dealing with an injury, and the injuries on his ankle. I don't like ankle injuries. He had to have surgery on it. It's not minor surgery, in my opinion. If you've got like multiple nerves damaged, I think he had like two nerves damaged. So that's pretty serious, in my opinion. Um, but his talent, the fact that he can play any wide receiver position is what I like about Corey Davis. So, I come from the Packers perspective, obviously. So, as a Packers fan, so I like to, I like that the Packers are willing to move him around, or they move their wide receivers around. And for us, if we were to take a wide receiver, we need a guy who can fill every role. And I think for most teams, that's a very useful trait to be able to play in the slot or either outside position. So that's why I have Corey Davis too. Mike Williams have three, but he's could very well be he's like the most likely receiver to be the first receiver off the board just because of his size. And normally I would say, and his size and body control with the lack of variables. Corey Davis I think would be above Williams um, easily if he put in good times, but he doesn't have them. Um, so if Mike Williams goes higher than everybody else, I think it's the body control in the air, which is really underrated, and it's not something that really comes up on you know uh, times testing. You have to watch the drills for that. You have to watch his highlight plays, which you don't judge a guy just by his highlight plays, but it shows what he can do. And then I guess I like Chris Godwin, I wouldn't even be shocked if Godwin goes in the first round, if he sneaks into like the 30s, because he's a really good player and he's got 4 speed. I thought I originally had him lower, um, because I didn't think he would test as good as he did, and then he just killed it in testing. Like I had him at, I have him as my fourth receiver now, and I had him as my sixth receiver, but I moved him up to after he killed it in the combine. So um, let's say he's a 6'1", which is, it's not tall, but it's not short, and he's 209 pounds, so he's got enough weight. Uh, 4.42 speed. So it's the low 4.2s, even 19 on the bench press. I love to see wide receivers with a high bench press. I think bench press is really underrated for wide receivers. It helps with blocking. It helps get beating the press. It's very important, in my opinion, for a wide receiver to have a good bench press. And that's about, they're lifting about the right amount of weight for them to show their actual strength. It's not like an endurance test for them like it is for the linemen. So 36-inch vertical jump, it's not like great, but it's, you know, pretty good. 40 inches would be great, but it's not like it's 32 inches like Shelton Gibson. So he 10.7 broad jump, 4.3 420 shuttle, 6.94 three cone, which is under 7.0, which is, you know, I guess you want a little better, but it's not too it's not horrible in my opinion. Oh wait, I was looking at the wrong. He had a 4.020 shuttle and a 7.01 three cone, so just over a 7. So you want a little better on the three cone there, but the 20 shuttle was, that's pretty good. So there's a lot to like about Godwin. He uses his body very well. Um, if the Giants don't get anyone, the Giants, I like the tight end for him. Like Njoku makes a lot of sense for the Giants. I think, OJ Howard's gonna go high, and then a lot of teams aren't gonna want to take a tight end highly, and then you start getting into a range where a lot of teams don't need a tight end. So Njoku makes the most sense, I think. But um, so then if you're talking off, let's go into the tight ends actually. So OJ Howard is my number one guy, and oh, one last thing about Godwin is that he can use his body well. He has to finish more catches. Like he gets open, the ball comes late, the cornerback closes, and then he shields the cornerback with his body, but he doesn't always make the catch. He can get his feet in, but he drops the ball. He's got to finish those plays. But I still think he's a low first, high second, probably high second. Um, but yeah, tight ends. OJ Howard is a very good talent, obviously. I had him as my number one last year, which pat myself on the back a little bit there because a lot of people had Butt and other people. And the thing is, last year he didn't have a lot of production, but you cannot you cannot box score scout tight ends. You just can't do it. Um, Too many colleges don't use their tight ends for production in terms of receiving. So, you know, there are some guys. This is going to be really interesting at tight end because OJ Howard, he went back to school, got in the top 10. He'll probably go in the top 10. Uh, he got the love that it's almost too high at this point, but he was always a first. Even last year, he was a first round guy in my opinion, and the number one guy. Um, but like, there's a really interesting guy in George Kittle, who after his combine time, I fell in love with. I wasn't paying too much attention to him before that. I went and watched his tape, and it's actually really good. Like, the guy can catch. He doesn't drop like balls at all, and he can run routes. He can block routes. He's an absolute eraser at in terms of blocking. You know, he can block linebackers, defensive linemen, cornerbacks. It doesn't matter. So I it's honestly hard to keep Kittle out of the first round. Like, I'm seeing him going in the third, and I'm thinking like, okay, this guy has elite athleticism. Why in the world is he, going way down in the third round? You know, I see. I think he has the talent to go low first, but I'm getting the feeling he's going to go in the second, just because there's so many tight ends this year, and the hype train never really got there for him. Coming from Iowa too, coming from pro style offense, coming from very good coaching, that an NFL pipeline that puts uh, it's I think it's Iowa's like number one in the nation in turning when you take convert stars to NFL talent. So like, they don't put the most guys into the NFL, but they have like the most low star guys that become the most in the NFL basically, because they deal with a lot of like two-star guys that they put into the NFL. So uh, I like Bucky Hodges. He's actually my number four tight end, while Kittle's my number five. Butt's my number three, but he's got the injury, and this is all based on film, so Butt might drop. And Ingram, um, I've got him as number six. Thing with Ingram is he's like a Devin Funches to me, but maybe a little bit better. So I like those guys in the high second. In general, I'm just not a fan of wide receiver tight end tweeners. And I think Hodges is a tweener too, but he's more of an actual tight end to me, where he's got more size to him and stuff. Where Ingram is like an oversized wide receiver that, I don't know, when you actually compare him to other wide receivers, though, he's not going to compare that favorably. It's like he's only actually looks that good if you compare him against other tight ends. So, um, and then I have like, I don't see a whole lot of third round tight end talent, because then you get into guys like Leggett and Gerald Everett, Adam Shaheen. I think these are more like fourth round guys. Uh, a lot of these guys, Jonu Smith, you have, and then I have them way down, but Eric Saubert and Billy Brown, these small school guys too. It's like, um, they have a huge jump to make, and people, especially putting Adam Shaheen in the second, he can't stretch the field. He's Yeah, he runs really well for his size, but he still doesn't run fast enough to stretch the field. So um, I think he's being overrated because his athleticism isn't going to be game changing. It's um, it's like a weird body type that's good, but it's just not dominating for football. So um, I think he's gonna have to be basically a blocking tight end. Um, that can slip out and can get open and make some big flashy plays, but he can't. Shaheen, I don't think you can rely on him in the receiving game, and he just dominated so much that over Division 2 talent, like, because that talent is so weak. So If he was in the FBS, I don't think Shaheen would have done too much. Um, then you get into guys like Sprinkle. I really liked Sprinkle at one point, but he just didn't test well enough, and um, he can catch the ball well though, and he needs to get a little stronger blocking. But if he does, he could be uh, a really good tight end. Um, then you have some guys like Cole Hikutuni and them, but I think they're more towards the end of the draft. So, um, if we're talking just the first round, offensive tackles suck. Like, a lot of times there's, uh, a lot of times the talent isn't good, or they'll say it's not good, but it actually is pretty good. And it's just like, you gotta find the guys that are small school or something. But like, no, this is a year where everybody's saying the offensive tackle class sucks, and it really does. Um, Ryan Ramchak is my number one, but he's got pretty serious injury concerns. Um, he's got frame issues. One thing I really don't like about him is his like his narrow frame. And I mean, it's just who else are you gonna take if you're not taking Ramchak? Are you gonna take Robinson? Then you get into serious, serious character concerns with Robinson that for some reason have been completely overlooked. So, and one guy I think could go way higher than people think is Roderick Johnson. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he goes in the first round. He's got serious talent and a coach. If you want to take a bet on one of these guys, Roderick Johnson is actually my number three offensive tackle. Um, Roderick Johnson's the guy to take a bet on and coach him up and improve his technique, and he could be a stud, like an all-pro left tackle. That's the type of talent he has. So if you're desperate for a tackle, that's where you go. Garrett Bowles, I mean, he's a zone blocking scheme guy. So that's gonna hurt him. He's 25. That's probably gonna hurt him. I could see a team like the Seahawks taking him, where you plug him in right away. You're trying to win a Super Bowl. You need help now. You think maybe his age will help add to his maturity, but I think he's 25. He's old. Um, Either way, but it either he does have character issues though in his past, and um, I don't know. His tape is solid, but I mean it's not dominant, and I think he'll make a better pro than a college player though, and in the zone blocking scheme. So he's. I'd be surprised if he got out of the first round. So then I have Taylor or Connor McDermott and Taylor Moton. Connor McDermott's out of UCLA, Taylor Moton, Western Michigan. Those are other potential, probably second round guys, but I mean, if one was a surprise in the first, it wouldn't shock me. With these guys are all going to be raised up. So, uh, my top offensive guard is actually Dan Feeney. I could see him going in the first round because he probably won't, but I wouldn't be surprised if he does because his tape is a lot better, in my opinion, than Forrest Lamps, who's my number two. And offensive guard is not a position that you need to look at athleticism first. So, um, you can get pretty much anybody to play the position, or a lot of guys. It's not hard to fill. And so I think Forrest Lamp's a little overrated, and Feeney's the best. Ben Braden is my number three, actually. I don't really see him as a first rounder though. Um, but I think his tape is really good. And then if we're talking um, in terms of Ben Braden, what makes him good is looking at my notes here quick. He plays strong and he's got a good first step on tape. He uses his hands very well too. But then, I thought his shuffle was just okay when he played tackle. So you move him into guard and his biggest negative was is minimized. So uh, Feeney's got strong. He's strong. He can pull very well, and I think that's where Dan Feeney makes his money is his pulling. He just dominates the second level, and you're not going to get that out of Lamp. If you want a first level defender, okay, Lamp's your guy, but Feeney's gonna get. He's gonna block those linebackers too. Um, and then Deion Dawkins, um, and Dorian Johnson are my next two. Uh, Dawkins, he also blocks very well at the second level, and I think he's got a lot to work on technique wise. But I wrote he's fairly athletic, and he actually tested really well in the combine. And then he just gets the job done. Like if he's a little bit beat, he finds a way to hang on. So it doesn't always look pretty, but the quarterback's safe or the hole gets open. So um, I like Dawkins. I just think he's second or third rounder, not a first rounder. Dorian Johnson, he's got good feet. He pulls well as well. Uh, he uses his hands well and he's athletic. The big thing with him is he needs to add strength and he's a little undersized. So that's what makes him a zone blocking scheme. Put him in the zone blocking scheme. His weaknesses become minimized and he's going to be a very good player. So if let's look at the center's side. Ethan Pokic is my number one. I think he could actually kick out to tackle if need be, but I mean, actually seriously play offensive guard. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets picked to be a guard, but um, he he's really one of those players you can take as a backup and literally back up all five positions, and that's really valuable. That could get him taken in the second round, especially because he can be a starting center long term. So uh, I'm gonna switch over and he's actually got pretty long arms. So what did they? Let me look to see what they came up with. His arms actually turned out to be 33 and an eighth inches, and that's like an inch longer than, or maybe two than you expect out of a center, and that shows up on tape. Like his arms look really long, and then he uses them really well. So he can be very dominant, and he doesn't necessarily need to double team. There's a lot of times where he could just take a guy himself. You know, if they have a nose tackle in and you're passing, just put Pokic on him and leave him be. It'll be fine. Um, Orlowski from West Virginia is my number two, and then Elfline's my number three. These guys are all pretty close. Like Orlowski and Elfline are more of the true center types. Um, you know, Orlowski's at 6'3" instead of 6'5". He's 298 pounds, 32 and a quarter inch arms. I mean, that's much more than you expect. Um, and he didn't do testing at the combine. I forgot what his issue is. And he's also 24, so it depends for age, is that an issue for you or not? Sometimes an age can be an asset because they're more grown up and ready to play quicker. But he did put up 224 or 24 bench reps. Um, so, he's pretty strong for a center. And then Elfline, let's see, he's a little shorter. And Elfline's a guy who's not very athletic, actually. It's just his technique is very good. He knows how to use leverage. So um, it's kind of, what do you want in a center? Um, I put Elfline can pull too. He's got good blocking at the second level. So if a team wants to pull their center a lot, um, Elfline might be the best choice. But if they're not going to pull their center, which a lot of times teams don't, then I think you want to go like an Ethan Pokic, especially if you need a guard and a center. Go with the Ethan Pokic or Lasky. So um, let's move on from centers and talk about kickers. Zane Gonzalez. I really like him. I think he could go. He's probably like a fourth round talent. Thing died. All right, guys. Sorry about that. I should be back now. So, um, but yeah, talking about Gonzalez, he hit like a really high percentage of, it was like over 50% of his 50 plus field goals. That's like really good. That's like third to fourth round talent. So if your team needs a kicker, you know, and you don't want a kicker highly, be scared of Zane Gonzalez. Otherwise, there's Jake Elliott from Memphis that I looked up. He's probably like a sixth, seventh round guy. Nothing special. And punters, Austin Rico. He's really interesting. The two punters I looked at are Kenny Allen from Michigan and Austin Rico from Idaho. And Rico, he kicks the ball incredibly high, but he is so raw. He'll kick some frustratingly, have him land on the 30, and the ball bounces back towards him. But the ball will boom like 40 yards in the air, like up high in the air. So, uh, you know, even as a kicker, like the ball just goes straight up. But from what I've read, he's not really a kicker at the NFL level. Probably not accurate enough, but honestly, I wouldn't mind trying him there because he does get such good height on those kicks. But in terms of punting, he needs to become more consistent. He has been working on his angling kick, and it's okay. Um, but if he was consistent, he'd be like a fourth round punter. But with his inconsistency, I've got to put him in sixth, seventh round. Kenny Allen, probably sixth round. Kenny Allen is probably more like the seventh round. He's much better at pinning the ball inside the five, but he doesn't have nearly the leg. And I don't want to take a kicker or a punter highly that his legs so limited from the beginning. So to switch over to defense, um, see, I have Jonathan Allen number one. I thought he was clearly the best on the defensive line. And I had Solomon Thomas on the edge. I think he's actually a better defensive tackle in the 4-3, but than being an edge player. But he did have the three cone that was under 7-0, so I'm gonna keep him at the edge for now. And but Allen's not that great for a top prospect. He's not that great. I don't even know if I really consider him blue chip prospect anymore. Um, Especially with all those injury concerns and stuff. I'm really expecting him to be, even though the first defensive lineman, I expect a little bit of a fall. He does have a high motor, and teams are going to fall in love with that. He is strong. He's got quite a few pass rushing moves, actually. Um, but I could see him as a 3-4 defensive end, even though he lacks length. That's kind of the problem is like, do you want to put him as a defensive tackle or do you want to put him as a defensive end? Uh, if you're running a 3-4 and you put him in a defensive end, then all of a sudden you get into length concerns. So, but I really think the 3-4 defensive end position is his best spot because he can take up multiple blockers so well. But I also thought he did benefit from having good players around him in Alabama. So that's a bit of a worry because there were times where he was beat and then the linebackers come up or the cornerback comes up and makes the play where really they weren't even supposed to in terms of scheme design. So um, I have Carlos Watkins from Clemson. I keep, Clemson defensive linemen are frustrating because they get into the NFL and a lot of them don't pan out. But so you have to worry about that a little bit. But he didn't have the best combine, but he um, there's a lot to like about him though in terms of film. And I guess if you're an athletic guy and you're just pretty much looking at the athletic traits, then Carlos Watkins isn't going to be a guy you really like because you're gonna look at. Actually, let me look up his times real quickly. Um, Estimated 6'3", 309 pounds, 34 and 5/8 inch arms, and he only had 25 on the bench press, which I mean that's not terrible, but uh, so then he didn't do the rest of the testing, so he ended up at his pro day with a 5.0, and Clemson has a fast track. I don't know how much that applies to the defensive linemen, but usually teams add like .03 onto their Clemson's pro day for like their skill guys. But something he had a 177 10-yard split. I think he's actually a lot faster than that, like a lot more bursty. And then he had a 501 40-yard dash, 28-inch vertical, 9 foot broad, 488 20, and or short shuttle, and 797 3-cone. So none of that's really good. Um, I think he's actually much better on film than he tests. And if I go over to my notes, I put he's strong and he gets his hands on offensive linemen. That's what really sets him apart and why I like him so much. As he gets his hands on them, he uses leverage well, and then he disengages well, and he can not only take up blockers, but he can make the running back tackle himself. He's going to be dominant in my opinion when it comes to uh, stopping guys on third and short. So very hard to run at. Um, and then he moved all along the defensive lineman or defensive line. So though he did get tired, he didn't play as many snaps as I wanted to see. So um, maybe motor concerns with him. But motor is really hard to judge, so I never put too much into it. Malik McDowell's then my number 3 guy on the defensive line. And I think when it comes down to it, only Allen will be a first round defensive lineman. I think Watkins, McDowell, and then I have Wormley. Like those guys are all getting into the second and third round. But McDowell has great hands. He plays bigger than he is. He's got good athleticism. Gets his hands on the offensive linemen to control them, and he could play inside or out. So, but then he would when I was watching him, he just had so many stupid personal fouls, and he constantly. It's what I call cheating. There's there are a couple things I call cheating when it comes to terms of defensive linemen, and you know, edge rushers. A lot of times they'll cheat by just pinning their ears back and going at the quarterback. And a guy like T.J. Watt, because of this scheme, he's like playing the run first and then going after. And I think a lot of people downgrade him for that. Um, but he's not cheating like they are. He's not assuming there's going to be a pass. And if he did, then I think he'd be a lot more successful against the just straight pass rushing. Um, so in terms of cheating with McDowell, um, he when he gets blocked, he'll leave his lane and he'll like try to get into a gap that he's not supposed to be in, and it's like sure you got some pressure eventually at the quarterback, but by the time you got there, he just ran up the middle because you gave up your lane, and it turned into a 20-yard run. And then he, he loses his mind. He's a stupid player, in my opinion, a low football IQ, and gets all these stupid personal fouls. And it's just really bad. So um, then we're talking. Let's move on. I'm not a big fan of these DLs, so don't want to talk too much about them. Uh, in the edge, Solomon Thomas, actually my number one overall prospect this year. So people really get on me for it, but Garrett has more athleticism, but he didn't do a three cone, and if I remember right, he didn't do a short shuttle either. And he didn't do these because I think he actually lacks bend. It's just he's got average bend at the hips. But with Solomon Thomas, he actually was showed he has very good bend. With a sub 703 cone, like I couldn't believe he ran that, and I liked him to start, but then that made me fall in love with him. And then he uses arms really well. He can split double teams really well. I like him more. I have him on the edge. I like him more as a defensive tackle that can be really disruptive. But it's hard. If a guy can play at the edge, I'm going to put him there first. So uh, he's got elite burst. Uh, and so when you have elite burst, you can split a double team, and once you do get blocked, you use your arms well, then um, that, or if you're just trying to take up blockers, then that's a really good combination for a prospect. So, and what did they have? Let me look up what he had real quick for bench press. Yeah, 30 on the bench press, which is very good. So you get a little less upside maybe with Garrett, but he's a lot safer. And he's what I call a football player, whereas Garrett's more of an athlete. So give me the football player over the athlete. Like give me the athletic football player over the athlete that plays football. Because I mean, Solomon Thomas is still pretty athletic. So the guy ran a 4.6940 at 273 pounds. That's ridiculous. So um, that puts Garrett at my number two, but he's still a high prospect, blue chipper. Uh, T.J. Watt is my number three. I think he can move all along in the 3-4. He can be even play both inside linebacker positions. I, th- I wouldn't have a problem with him playing defensive end, but he definitely is a better fit for the 3-4. He's got he's got great bend, and he uses his hands well. He can hold the point even against much bigger players, um, and he sheds blocks to actually make the tackle. He, when he does get the reason he had so many sacks was because people say it was because they were effort sacks and stuff. No, it's not. It's because he's so athletic that when he actually gets to the quarterback, he makes the tackle. They quarterbacks don't get away, and it's funny how people are downgrading him for what should be, an asset. And I think that's how guys fall when they really shouldn't. Is you turn an asset into almost a detriment through the lens that you're looking at it. So um, he can cover too, like TJ Watt can do it all, and he's only a junior and converted from the offensive side of the ball. So he was a tight end before tearing his ACL a couple times. So you know, he, the arrow's pointing up. I think he should be. If I was in a NFL team picking that needed an edge player in the 3-4 in the middle of the draft, I would have no problem picking Watt 15th overall. Um, I have no. I mean that's where pass rushers go. I see guys like Charles Harris going that highly and or higher, and I'm like, to me, Watt looks like a heck of a lot better, and you're asking him to do a heck of a lot more. There are very few guys that can put pressure on the ball on the quarterback who can uh, play the run while doing it, and also who can drop back into coverage when you need him to. And then he can blitz well on delayed blitz, and he actually finishes plays. He's got really good play recognition. Like Watt's got it all. So he just needs a little bit of refinement. So Tim Williams is my next guy. Um, and remember, this is on field, so he does have those character that issues that probably drop him to the high second. But in the end, if you need a pass rusher, I could see him at the low first. You know, at some of these teams like the Patriots, they can never get their hands on good pass rushers. So um, I wouldn't be without trading up because they pick so low every year. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if a team in the low 20s or 30s ended up taking him. The only thing is that does give me some hesitation is Williams has like I think it was in the 4-3, it's just three cone. Three cone is like the most important thing for an edge rusher. Yeah, he had or 4-3, a 7-3-6. Um, so that makes me a little nervous, but he does deal with it well. So, um, but if he had a better three cone, I would consider him a top 20 prospect. So uh, he he is really strong. He's got good burst, and maybe he can get away with just being more of a bull rusher than an actual speed rusher. So Derek Barnett, I might have him a little low. Like I don't know. I'm kind of back and forth on Barnett, but he's my fifth best edge rusher, and he's a 206'3", 265 pounds, or actually, is that what he came out at? Yeah, 6'3", 259 pounds by the time the combine rolled around. But he's got massive 10-inch hands, which is funny because his arms are actually kind of short at 32 and eighth inch arms. But 488, 40, is solid. It's not great, but it's only a 40. 6.963 cone, the most important attribute. It's under 7.0, so that makes me happy. um, 4.44.20 shuttle is pretty solid. So he's obviously agile. He's got some bend to him. Um, you can tell that just by his times. And he hits really hard too, um, which I think he can create some turnovers. And I did note that he's a playmaker. So, and like T.J. Watt, Barnett has surprisingly good cover skills. So, um, the only thing, I put he's inconsistent off the offensive line. A lot of people are saying that he cheats. I think it's really hard to actually determine that he cheats, and it's almost becoming a narrative. But if you can consistently get away with, figuring out the snap count and stuff, I that can translate to the next level, and I think he can still be a really good player despite cheating. Like, cheating doesn't really downgrade him that much. Um, it, if he is, guessing the snap count. So, then I have Carl Lawson, Derek Rivers, Taco Charlton, Vince Beagle, and Takaris McKinley. Then Terrell Basham, and finally Charles Harris. And, all these guys are just so close. So many of them lack bend. Um, I'm not really going to go through them all, but I feel like a lot of them are pretty bursty candidates, but they don't have it all together. Um, and then the guys that do have burst and bend, like Derek Rivers, they're undersized. Although I love Derek Rivers because he's undersized but so strong. Um, but let's move on to the linebacker position and talk about inside linebackers. Reuben Foster, I think, is the number one guy. He's got those character possible character concerns, but even bigger, I think, are the injury concerns because he's the one that had the issue at the combine with the doctors or whatever. But um, he's got that shoulder, and you know, it's no surprise to me that he has the shoulder issue because he actually hits with his shoulder. He needs to learn to get into a triple threat stance, make the tackle, quit trying to just demolish guys. Just learn to tackle them because at this point, I think his shoulder's been hurt like 3 times. He's got to start protecting it. But he's quick, decisive, great player recognition, plays at full speed all the time, strong, excellent in coverage. And then, I put that for negatives, he leads with his shoulder, which is why he gets injured. And he's got I put good speed, but not elite speed. And he ended up with I don't I got let me look up his 40 time real quick. He didn't run um at the combine, so he does he did 10.25 inch hands. So holy cow. Okay, so yeah, he didn't do anything at the his pro day either. So that makes me wonder about his athleticism a little bit. Because he could have done some of the drills, in my opinion, uh, like some of the running drills, but I don't have a problem with him not doing it. Um, and Alabama, I think they had 2 pro days. Their first one was on March 8th, so it was really early. So that would have hurt him from doing his pro day. Um, but Hassan Reddick is my number two guy. I don't like him as much as other people do. I'd put him up like in the high 20s, or mid 20s maybe. Um, I see him going like 10 or maybe 15 to 20, and that's like way too high for me. He's athletic, but he's got a lot to learn. Uh, and basically what I had written for him is he's bursty and he can hold the point. He gets to the balls in many different ways. So that's always nice to see when he's not just, chasing plays down, or when he's not just getting to the ball with the way the scheme's telling him to. And he's not just used in one way. So he when a player gets to the ball in like many different ways, it's a good sign that they're a general playmaker. And so part of the reason though that I keep him more in the 20s than the teens is because he can get caught up in traffic, and he's only got okay bend, and well, that's what I thought on the field anyway. And so let's see what is. Oh, I don't. Then you have Zach Cunningham. Sorry, my throat's getting a little sore. But you have Zach Cunningham as my number three guy from Vanderbilt, and there's a lot to like there. And it's just that I don't really value these linebackers that highly. I have Gerard Davis fourth, two, and McMillan number five, Beckwith number six. Like all of these guys are pretty good. They're gonna fill the holes and recognize the play and all of that. They're pretty athletic, but um, it's just you can get a lot of guys to do what you want at linebacker there. So that it puts them more of the high to mid second round to me than really wanting to take them in the low first. So, but let's talk about the cornerbacks because that's an exciting position this year. It was actually like, as many of you know, it was like such a deep position. And then the pro, like things just kept happening because we lost Sidney Jones at the pro day. Um, and he was my number three cornerback. And then we lost Fabian Moreau to a bicep injury, and he was my number seven cornerback, but like number seven as in still a high second rounder. And then so I have Lattimore first, Conley second, and I think both of those guys are like top 10 talents. But then Conley, he has the rape charge against him, and even though I think the rape charge is like, or it's not actually a charge yet, but um, even though that it's highly questionable on whether it's actually true or a false accusation, um, there's still an investigation underway, and there's always a possibility that he's found, they do charge him, and you lose your top pick, so your first round pick that win the top 10. So I wouldn't be surprised if he drops to the bottom of the first, or some are saying top 100. He might get into the top 100. Like Adam Schefter said, he talked to a team that is gonna put Gareon Conley, like he will go top 100, and it's like to even be talking like that tells me that there's a serious drop on boards, at least some of these boards, where he's going from like the first to the third. Um, and then, Kevin King is really good. Um, he's more of an athlete, though, that has to. Kevin King doesn't really stop the run very well. He just kind of stays on his receiver and locks him down. But he's so athletic, and he can cover a guy in the slot. When they try to put on one of these big athletic tight ends in the slot, like Evan Ingram, and Kevin King's going to be a guy that can just lock them down. And if a team doesn't have a guy like that, you can put him outside and he can lock down like a number one or number two receiver. So Kevin King can, if he puts it all together, he's really talented. He's really an exciting player. And I have Jalen Tease Tabor, as my number 5 guy. And then he ended up running that like horrible 40 time. I dropped him way down to like 15th or something like that, and to my 15th cornerback. But I just don't think, looking at his film, it doesn't seem like he's that bad. He's probably a high 4.4, low 4.5 guy. So someone could get a steal. He'll probably go in like the 3rd round now, but I think I put him back up to my I put him back up as my 5th cornerback, but I wouldn't be shocked if a team takes him in the 2nd. I would in the 1st just because there's so much risk there, but um, Howard Wilson I really like in the 6th. Didn't run the best 40 time, but the 3-cone is outstanding. And as long as you have an outstanding 3-cone, you can be a great slot receiver, when you're undersized like Wilson. So um, I don't really like guys, it's not that I hate them, it's just we're so deep, and Humphrey, Desmond King, Cordrea Tankersley, uh, Tre'Davious White, these are guys that, I'm not really big fans of, um, but I still see them as like possible day 2 guys. It's just they're at the, more towards the bottom of round 3 for me, so. And I've looked in the past, like, you'd be surprised how many cornerbacks go in the draft. So I have like 24 cornerbacks ranked, and a lot of drafts take more than 24 cornerbacks. So uh, at safety, I like Malik Hooker. As a, I have him as my top guy, but with the injuries, I would actually drop him below Jamal Adams, who's my number 2. But it's kind of a worthless comparison, anyways. Because do you want a strong safety or a free safety? So, but then there's Obi Melifonwu, however you say his name, from Connecticut. He's more of an athlete, but he could be a really good strong safety, I think. So let's see what I have as notes on him. He's fast, strong, and a solid tackler, but he's lacks change of direction, misses tackles too often. Um, it's kind of funny, like he's a solid tackler, but because he'll make some really good tackles, but then he like puts himself in bad positions, and he'll end up missing a lot of tackles as well. So yeah, I guess maybe I should have put inconsistent tackler. Uh, but he quits on some plays when he gets behind, and I'm not a big fan of that. Slow to recognize some plays. And I think that just comes from some rawness that he has. He takes poor angles, and that's what Malik Hooker does. Is Malik Hooker will take some really bad angles, um, as well. So I don't actually love Hooker. I think he's gonna go high, but um, he's actually the reason Ohio State lost to Clemson is because Clemson just kept targeting him and putting him in bad positions, and he would freelance, and then they would just burn. They'd go deep, and the cornerbacks can only do so much, and they kept burning the safety over and over. So, but in terms of Obi, he really needs to improve those angles as well. So when I watched him, he lacked some speed, which he actually did pretty well at his combine. So um, I think he's a guy that, yeah, he has 4.4 speed. So he's a guy that I don't think lives up to his times quite as well. But overall, like, you can only downgrade him so much, downgrade his time so much. So um, from what you see on the film, so. He doesn't use leverage well. You know, if wide receiver starts blocking him, he has a tough time getting off it. He struggles. He gets blocked by every offensive lineman that tries to block him, which you should be able to avoid some of them. So then I have Jabril Peppers. You know, he's quite the playmaker. I put jack of all trades, obviously, but he gets blocked too easily, I think. He really gets lost when the play starts getting behind him. And I actually think he's a free safety. I think he'll get um, I think he'll get drafted as a strong safety. But if you put him at a linebacker or a strong safety, wide receivers are going to run routes behind him, like drag routes, and he's going to get lost. And especially in zone coverage, but even in man, and then it's going to be a big play. Like I would not want to see what New England does to Jabril Peppers. It's not going to be pretty. And but the thing is when he's like deeper, he can keep the play in front of him. So even though he gets lost when the play gets behind him, he can still be a free safety, just by keeping the play in front of him and being that like rangy guy that can go and hit hard and break up plays. Or, so break up catches, I mean. So that's why I like Peppers as a free safety. Jonathan Ford is my next guy. Um, he's a hard hitter, good tackler, avoids blocks, good blitzer. He's definitely a strong safety and doesn't always, in my opinion, and he doesn't always find his ball when he's in coverage as a negative. So uh, that's why I don't really want him as a free safety because of that ball tracking issue. Um, but I guess that's all of the positions at this point. So, um, oh, I didn't go through running back, I guess. Real quickly, Dalvin Cook's my number one with Fournette at my number two. I just think Fournette, I see injuries in his future, and I think he'll be good for a little bit, but I'd rather have. I think Fournette is limited in scheme too, where Cook is like. Some of his catches are really, really good with over the shoulder catches. So, but unlike McCaffrey, he's an actual running back. And I think it's special when a running back catches well, but he's still a running back. Where some of these other guys, like Curtis Samuel, they're not even running backs anymore. So, Fournette, really good. These are some high guys. Obviously has the character issues. Fournette has the injury issues. Cook has some injury issues too. Joe Mixon, some character issues, but I don't think his issues are that serious. In my opinion, I have no problem overlooking them. And he was attacked by a woman and he defended himself. Maybe he used a little excessive force. That's up for debate, but in the end, he wasn't going around looking for trouble. Trouble, trouble found him, as they say. He was so. I don't want to get too much into that situation, but uh, I do like Perrine a lot. Samaje Perrine. He's my sixth best running back. I think you can use him as a like backup fullback and then still use him as a goal line guy or short yardage guy. Use him as a blocker. Um, if you bring him in with a plan, like he could be really good. But McCaffrey is my fourth guy. I like him in the like mid to low, more like the low uh 20s, because if you put him in the top of the first, mid first, then you're saying he's got to take a lot of touches. Because I don't really like giving a guy that's only gonna get like 10 touches a game and or 5 touches, say 10 touches a game, and you're gonna draft him as a running back. Is he really gonna change the game enough in those ten touches? I question that. So, um, that's pretty much it. Well, it's a good thing that Louis that we're just talking draft. So Cook's not about Cook not being number one. He will drop probably because of some of those issues. Um, but because of the character and injury combined. But in the end, like in my rankings are just based off pure football and what I see on the field. And Delvin Cook is like the best guy out there. I challenge you to give me a better name. I mean, Fournette just. I think Fournette. I see like why people compare him to Adrian Peterson, but um, part of that comparison is because both of them have a limitation where neither of them catch the ball. So, anyways, I guess I'm gonna end things here. But have a good one, guys. And who do I think for the Seahawks? I think they should get a offensive lineman. It's more who I think they should than who they will, but I think they should go with an offensive lineman. And Garrett Bowles, I think, is a potential because his age won't be as much of a factor, and Bowles has outstanding feet for that zone blocking scheme that the Seahawks run. So, um, the thing with it comes down to character with Bowles because he has some issues in his past, but from what I've heard, he's gotten over them. And I think you can put Bowles at tackle, and that allows you to, you know, keep Jokel at guard if you want, which, it's not clear if they want to put him at guard or tackle, but um, then you know that Bowles is an offensive tackle. So then the other guys, you're kind of limiting where they're going to be going, and it's not, so much of a musical chairs. Um, and if some guys don't work out, like when none of these guys have true positions, some of them are likely to fail. So, uh, Garrett Bowles, I even for a surprise trade, I put don't be surprised if you trade your third rounder and move up to like 20 or 19. Or if you like go to 21 or 22, you can use your comp picks. Trade one of your third round comp picks and move up because between 20 and like 26 or wherever it is that Seattle's picking, there's a lot of there's a lot of teams that need offensive linemen, and there simply aren't many offensive linemen. So if you want one, it makes sense to move up and get them. And Seattle has three third rounders. So why not give one up and move up and guarantee that offensive lineman? Eddie Lacy's good. He comes with a lot of baggage though, so I don't think he's a long-term answer. I think he's a short-term guy. Uh, he's got asthma, and he does need to go out for plays because of that asthma. If he plays in, say, Denver, it's going to be a big problem. Um, he's The other thing is, if the play is not blocked well, he doesn't have the burst to get to the line of scrimmage, so he's gonna lose like 2 to 3 yards. But if it's blocked decently, and he can get through to the second level, and he starts getting into some open fields, and some open field, he'll like do the spin move and start trucking guys. And I think in the end, Seattle fans are going to be a little disappointed by Lacy because he's also like he has depression issues. Like I think they're chronic depression from you know he is goes back to Louisiana from Hurricane Katrina. He's one of those people that like his whole family lost their house and stuff. So um, he eats like all the time. All he posts about is like food, and there's stories where he'd randomly just find burritos in his pocket while like in the classroom at during meetings and stuff. And you know all these things add up. He was up to like 265 pounds. Jerome Bettis wasn't even 265 pounds. Like that's big for a fullback. That's serious. That really slows him down, and he needs to slim down and stay slim, but he's shown no ability to do that. So if if he can keep his weight down, yeah, he can be good. But I also think that by the time everything starts working out, he's gonna start getting up there in age, and once he loses a step, he's done because um, there's a lot. He's already not that bursty. So if he loses another step, he's not going to be able to hit the holes. So I think Seattle needs to continue to look for running backs, but Lacy can get them through for now. Um, and if you don't expect too much out of him, he's not going to be a Marshawn Lynch for you guys. But he can, I mean, he can still be a 1,000-yard rusher. So a challenge process. Or complement Process. Yeah, CJ Process. I really liked him out of Notre Dame. The thing about Process, I don't know if you really want to give him a lot of carries. I think, use Process and as, a third down back to catch the ball and stuff. I think you can. Process could become a three down back eventually, maybe if he develops, but um, where Procise really excels is catching the ball. So Lacy excels at running the ball when they think you're going to pass, especially. So um, if they think you're going to run and you don't have a dominant offensive line, Lacy is not going to get anything for you. And that's what really worries me about Lacy with Seattle. So um, yeah, I really like Process. I would I would not be surprised if he turns into Seattle's number one, um, because when he did get into the game, he made some good things happen. It's just he needs a time to develop is basically what it is, and it's like that. It feels like it's that year for Process to come up big. But it's also like I can see why the front office wouldn't want to depend on him. So I mean, Rawls is fine, but I think Procise can pass Rawls. I think he's like Procise is more talented in my opinion. So Any other guys? I'm a Packers fan, so um, I actually know quite a bit about like John Schneider, who came from the Packers, and like a lot of what their theories are about drafting and that. They like those big cornerbacks and tall cornerbacks, and um, I think for the Packers, the height limit on cornerback is like 5. I think it's 5'10" and a half. Um, so the Seattle Seahawks might have that same height restriction. No. Christian McCaffrey is Process is more of a running back than McCaffrey, and McCaffrey is a better um, receiver. Even like Process has good like the same hands as McCaffrey, but McCaffrey runs way better routes. He's way more agile. Uh, so it's just Process isn't Process bigger too? Let me look up and remind myself at what Process's size was. Um, yeah, Process is 220 where um, McCaffrey is like 200. Yeah, McCaffrey is 5'11", 202, and Process was 6 foot 220. And Process is 4'4", 840, where McCaffrey ran a 4.48 as well. So they ran similar 40 times, but uh, the big difference is in the agility drills, which are the 20-yard shuttle and the three cone, where Process ran a 7.19 and McCaffrey ran a 6.57. Like, that's huge. McCaffrey is an ankle breaker. Uh, and McCaffrey ran a 4.22 20-yard shuttle, and uh, CJ Process ran a 4.42, so a full 0.2 of a second slower. So, you know, I don't think they're Obi might. I don't think Kevin King's gonna last that long. I don't think either one of those guys are gonna last that long in the second round. So, what positions do you want? What positions would you consider need for Seattle? Because in one of my draft magazine, which is pre, it's pre combine and pre free agency, it says they need a left tackle and right tackle. But I know they did pick up Jokel, and then they needed DB, tight end, and defensive tackle. Um, as far as safety, you're talking strong safety or free safety? Because don't they just like they're getting Earl Thomas back? So I'm assuming you want someone to complement him. Because if you just want a backup safety, I think you got to take one lower. Jeremy Lane had a bad year last. Um, well, let me look at. It looks like you guys like. He's 6 foot too, so you guys like tall safeties as well. Um, and cornerbacks. So for I always think if you need cornerbacks and safeties, prioritize the cornerback because good cornerbacks can make safeties kind of useless. Like, you don't really need a safety if your cornerbacks don't get beat. So, um, Howard Wilson is a really good. I love Howard Wilson as a guy who can be like a slot cornerback, um, and that you can get good value at. Um, Otherwise, if you if you're willing to wait on a guy like Sidney Jones, you can get good value out of him. Um, Desmond King is still like a solid guy, I think. I think he's dropped like too far. Um, if I remember right, he Desmond King improved his times at his pro day. Let me look this up real quick. And then he can kind of. Some people are putting him at free safety, but oh, it looks like he ran a 4.60 at his pro day, so it's a little slow, but um, he still has a 6.67 3 cone, so I still think he can be a slot cornerback, but for linebacker, there's not. I mean, I see a lot of middle linebackers this year. There's not a whole lot of guys at the linebacker position. Duke Riley, how about him? He, I really like Duke Riley. If you're talking a little later, I think you can get some value out of him. Where he reads plays well, he's got pretty good burst, and he's a great tackler, but he lacks elite lateral speed and can't hold. He can't exactly hold the point against big offensive tackles or anything. Yet he doesn't avoid blocks very well. So I still think a guy like Duke Riley is pretty good. Yeah, Reuben Foster. I still think he's gonna go top 15. I don't really see him. He might drop a little, but I don't think he's gonna drop a whole lot. All these guys, people are saying that guys are gonna drop because of character or injury, and like some might. The problem is like everybody else has character and injury concerns. So I mean, you you can't be too picky with this year. You gotta kind of pick a guy that has one or the other. Yeah, but I mean, look at Dalvin. Let's just actually let me look real quick at a mock draft here. So okay, so you have like Myles Garrett had actually some concerns with you know his production was a big concern where it was like hit and miss, and it kind of seemed like he quit and he had the injury as well, ankle injury I think it was. Then you had Jonathan Allen who's got like injury concerns like with his shoulders. He's already got arthritis in both. You know, um, Jamal Adams, if I remember right, is relatively clean. But Marshawn Lattimore has injuries. Malik Hooker has injuries. Leonard Fournette had injuries. Reuben Foster had injuries. Um, like you could go right down the list, and like just about every one of these guys had injuries or some sort of character. Like Dalvin Cook has character and injury. That's you know. Then you get in like Tease Tabor had like overconfidence or something, and on top of that he ran really badly. So Cam Robinson, serious character concerns there. Um, so like what guys here are you like gonna be like we're gonna pass on this guy with some concerns in order to take another guy that doesn't have concerns. It's like there are no other guys, or there are very few other guys. So yeah, OJ Howard's pretty clean, but he's that's like one guy, and that's a tight end. Like tight end isn't exactly a premium position, so he'll go top 10. Like part of the reason he's going top 10 is because he is so clean. And there's very few of those guys. All right, see you later.